Hi, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining in for today's meeting. We are going to start our meeting in just a moment here. We're going to let everyone get settled in. Hope you're all having a great day so far. All right, so if you're just joining us, thank you so much for joining in for today's Suicide Prevention Coalition quarterly meeting. We are very, very happy to have everyone here today. We will be starting the meeting in just a moment, letting everyone get settled in. Okay, so as you're getting settled in, if you could please just let us know who's with us today. So if you could just in the chat, give us your name and what organization you represent, we would greatly appreciate that. We have lots of wonderful information to share with you today, so very excited to get started. Okay. Ooh. Thank you all. It's great to see how many folks we have with us today. All right. I think we should get started. Okay, well, good morning. We are so happy to have you all here with us today. My name is Rebecca Ancion. I'm a program director with Injury Prevention Services here at Riverside University Health System Public Health. And I would like to hand it over to my co-chair, Diana, to introduce herself as well.
Good morning, everyone. Diana Gutierrez. I'm the Prevention and Early Intervention Manager here at RUHS Behavioral Health and also serve as a co-chair for your Suicide Prevention Coalition. Maisha.
Yep, and we have Maisha as well. If she can, I'll hand it over, Maisha, for you to introduce yourself.
Thank you, Becky and Diana. Good morning, everyone. Maisha Bobo. I am a Staff Development Officer with Riverside University Health System Behavioral Health in the Prevention and Early Intervention team. And I also have the pleasure of serving as the Suicide Prevention Coordinator for our coalition.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Okay, so again, very happy to have you all here today. The purpose of these quarterly meetings is twofold. The first is to broaden our knowledge and build expertise in suicide prevention best practices. And the second is to share local resources and updates regarding suicide prevention efforts that are happening here in our county. So before we get started, we would like to just learn a bit more about who's in the room with us. So if you could please take a moment to complete the poll questions that are on the screen.
Okay.
All right. So just want to know who's here with us today. So if you could just fill out some of these questions for us, what region you represent, what population you serve here in our county, the best, what best describes your work setting, and then, what you hope to gain from today's presentation. So we'll give you just a moment to fill out these questions. And we will see who's in the room with us. Okay. Give you just a few more seconds here. Get those last questions answered. Okay, well, thank you so much for everyone that filled in the poll for us. If we could have the results shared.
We're just under 80%.
All right. So it looks like majority of our folks represent countywide. So wonderful to have you all here with us. And it's great to see we have our desert. We also have our mid-county region and our western region represented. We do have, for those that are who you serve, we see that we have a nice mix of folks who are serving our transitional age youth, children, and even our adults and older adults. So welcome. We appreciate having you here. And then in terms of who, where you work and what best describes your work setting, quite a few of us here are representative from, we have community-based organizations, we have our schools, higher ed, even our county departments such as behavioral health. And then we have even folks here from law enforcement and hospital first responders, elected officials, and even others. So we just welcome all of you. It's so great to see this because we know that everyone has a role to play in suicide prevention. So it's nice to see individuals that are representing so many different sectors here today. And then we have what we hope to gain from today's presentation. So majority of us really just want to have a better understanding about elevated risk. We also want to know how we can engage schools in supporting our LGBTQ plus community. We also want to understand the barriers to youth disclosing. And so we're just very excited to have all of you here today because I think the information that we will be sharing is going to be very helpful. Okay. So moving along, we in our agenda for today, we do have quite a bit that we're going to cover. So first, you're going to get a quick overview of our coalition, followed by a presentation titled LGBTQIA plus 101, and that's going to be given to us by Robert Bohan Lara. And then we'll have some Q&A followed by a second presentation from Paul Baum. And the topic is suicide risk and protective factors for LGBTQ plus youth. We also are going to share some local resources, and then we're going to close out with some announcements for you on upcoming events. So just a quick snapshot of what we've got covered. As we're moving along, every quarterly meeting, we like to provide just a quick overview of our coalition, and we recognize that for some of you, this may be familiar information, and for others, it may be your first introduction to our county's Suicide Prevention Coalition. So first, we just want to start off by reviewing our coalition's beliefs, and that starts with suicide is often preventable with the right knowledge and skills. And we also firmly believe, just as I said earlier, everyone can play a role in suicide prevention, regardless of background or experience. So hopefully you see us by our beliefs. That's why we so very much welcome everyone and anyone who wants to join in these efforts. And then in our vision statement, we do believe that working collaboratively in Riverside County to eliminate suicide deaths and suicide attempts and increase resources and supports. So that is very much what we follow and what our vision is for the coalition. So now I'm going to hand it over to Diana, who's going to talk a bit more about the coalition structure.
So we just want to give you a really high level overview of how the coalition is built. So we have built the entire strategic plan and coalition around the suicidal crisis path. And along that path is how our subcommittees have been identified. So currently the coalition is co-led as a partnership between public health and behavioral health. We do see suicide prevention as a public health issue. And each of our subcommittees, there are 8 in total, you can see them here, are led by a variety of folks, both in county representation and community-based organization and school representation. And they help us really do the work each month. So these subcommittees meet every month on their particular area of the strategic plan. And the hopes is that as each of these groups is working on their portion of the plan, then we're going to see the numbers drop in Riverside County. And so if you want to know more about what the work specifically is, we will have an update document that will be shared with you all along with these slides and the recording after our presentation today. But you can also scan that QR code or go to rivcospc.org. That is our website that has the strategic plan. It has subcommittee agendas, minutes, and information about their current initiatives and projects. And you can find all sorts of resources and other information on that website as well. So I encourage you to check it out if you haven't already. And so I want to take just a couple of minutes to talk about community agreements. The goal here is remembering that when we talk about suicide, this can bring up a lot of emotions. And we want to make sure that this is a safe learning environment because we're all here to make improvements in the area of suicide prevention for Riverside County. So we ask as we're meeting with you today to help create a safe learning environment for our presenters and for everyone in this space together, that you be present, that we demonstrate respect, and that you share what you've learned. We want you to take the knowledge from this information, apply it to your work every day, apply it to your lives with your family and your friends and your neighbors, and share broadly. We're recording today, and we'll be putting this recording on our rivcospc.org website. You can see all previous quarterly meetings there as well. And so if someone's not here today and you think, hey, they could benefit from this information, direct them to our website. Into the work that we're doing so that everyone benefits from having this amazing information that can help shape and support Riverside County community members. All right, so we're through all of that. Now we want to get to the good stuff, which is our content of the day. So I want to welcome our first presenter for our meeting today, Robert Bohan Lara. Rob is a certified Medi-Cal senior peer support specialist for the Desert Region Children's and Transitional Age Youth Programs with Riverside University Health System's Behavioral Health Department. Thank you for being here today, Rob, and the floor is now yours.
Thank you very much, Diane. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Welcome. I'll begin. So our presentation is going to be on LGBTQIA 101. Let's get started. So this morning, I just would like to pose just a couple questions to you all of you who don't identify as LGBTQIA. So please keep these questions through your mind throughout this presentation. We don't need to answer them right away. And actually, we're not going to really answer them verbally at all. It's just something to keep in your mind while we watch this. The first question is, when did you know you were heterosexual? The second question is, when did you know you were male? And the third question is, when did you know you were female? All right, next slide. So we've always been here. In the end, it's a human struggle. The story and history of the LGBTQIA community is a complex tapestry of a people who, even with all the millenniums of bigotry, persecution, showed incredible resiliency and bravery. It is a story of determination and tenacity that even with all the odds against them, they not only survived, but persevered, finding passionate love, loss, triumph, and unimaginable barriers in self-acceptance. Next slide. So what does LGBTQIA mean? Well, let's just break it down. L stands for lesbian. That's women who are attracted to their own sex. The G stands for gay, which stands for men who are attracted to their own sex. And gay can also mean both lesbian and gay, but they are separate, but there's sometimes they're grouped together. B is for bisexual. That's men or women attracted to either sex. T is for trans. Someone whose gender differs from the sex they were assigned at birth. Q is for queer, an umbrella term simply meaning anyone who identifies as part of the LGBTQIA community. And queer used to be a derogatory word that we changed and kind of used it ourselves to kind of change the meaning of it. I is for intersex. Intersex is the general term used for a variety of conditions in which a person is born with a reproductive or sexual anatomy that doesn't seem to fit the typical definitions of male or female. And asexual is the lack of sexual attraction to others or absent of interest in or desire for sexual activity. So now we have sexual orientation. Sexual orientation refers to an individual's enduring pattern of emotional, sexual, and romantic attraction. We have heterosexual, which of course is for people of the opposite sex that are attracted to each other. Homosexual, which is for anyone of the same sex that is attracted to each other. Homosexual is sometimes referred more to the male side than the women. Like as we go down below, we have lesbian, which are females who are attracted to each other. Bisexual are either sex that they're either men or women that are attracted to either sex. And then of course, asexual, which are people who do not have much attraction or no romantic feelings towards other people. Now you might think that some of these terms like heterosexual and homosexual have been used forever. However, those terms came into the vocabulary in 1869. It wasn't until the late 19th century that we tried to scientifically categorize sexual attraction. There are many more sexual orientations expressions like pansexual, that is to feel an attraction to people no matter their gender. Fluid, this refers to the fact that sexuality, sexual orientation, and sexual behavior can change in different situations or throughout the course of a lifetime. And bicurious, someone who is experimenting with their own sexuality for either the same sex or opposite sex. The list of sexual expressions is long and can sometimes be very confusing. Next slide, please. Gender identity. Now, gender identity is an individual's innermost concept of self as male, female, both, or neither. A person's gender identity can be the same or different than one's sex assigned at birth. Here's a list of gender identities that we'll be talking about later. There's cisgender, that's a person who identifies with the sex they're assigned at birth. Transgender, a person who does not identify with the sex assigned at birth. Transsexual, a person who has had either hormonal treatment or surgeries to align themselves with the identity that they identify as. And gender fluid, people may anytime identify as male, female, nutrius, or any other non-binary identity, or some combination of identities, gender which varies over time. And genderqueer is denoting or relating a person who does not subscribe to a conventional gender distinctions, but identifies with neither both or a combination of male and female genders. And we'll have a video on gender identity.
Gender identity is a personal, deeply held sense of gender. It's not about your hair or your makeup or your clothes. It's about you. It's about how you feel. So it's not necessarily visible to others. I'm gender nonconforming, and I always have been. I've always been drawn to both masculine and feminine things, and it's taught me that my gender identity is fluid.
So let's talk about intersex. So we have male and female, but intersex is a general term used for a variety of conditions which a person is born with a reproductive or a sexual anatomy that doesn't seem to fit the typical definitions of female or male. As you see, we have male, here we have the XY chromosomes. Intersex could be XO, XXX, XXY, or XYY. Next slide. So a little more about intersex. Being intersex is naturally occurring variation in humans. It is not a medical problem. Awareness of intersex conditions is growing. In the past, when a baby was born intersex, doctors and the family would decide on a gender and raise the baby as that gender, either male or female. This sometimes caused great harm to those that are intersex. As we explained, both gender is not physical, sexual organs that you may be born with. Children who are born with atypical sex characteristics are often subject to involuntary genital normalization surgery, performed without their consent to fit their sex, leaving them with permanent, irreversible infertility and causing severe mental suffering.
Hi, my name is Kento. I'm a singer-songwriter, foodie, and I'm intersex. Intersex means someone who has a reproductive or sexual anatomy that does not seem to fit the typical definitions for the female or male sex. Some identify with the gender assigned to them at birth, while many others do not. I didn't understand what that meant when I was told I was intersex. I had never heard of it. I didn't have any information. So I began educating myself and I learned a lot about myself along the way. Intersex is a variable gender expression. There are more configurations than XY or XX. Everyone is so different, and every intersex person is different. If you are intersex and you have questions, reach out. There is a whole beautiful community of intersex individuals, and we're here to help you. Hi, my name is Ken.
So now we have the gender unicorn. I love this graphic. So this just kind of explains a little bit about the identity and also emotional and physical attraction. So of course we have gender identity, which is from the mind. It's what we think. That's who we are and what we know we are, and gender expression. Then we have sex assigned at birth, female, male, or other, intersex. Next, we have the physical attraction, who we're attracted to, sexually attractive, that's men, women, or other genders. And then who we're emotionally attracted to, who we fall in love with, women, men, or other genders.
There was a time where I began to think about what pronouns I wanted to use. And I tried he, him, his, and that didn't feel right. And I tried she, her, hers, and that wasn't it either. And then when I realized I just wanted to use they, them, theirs, that's when something clicked. It was deep and personal and comfortable.
A pronoun is a word used in place of a name when you refer to someone, often in relation to their gender. Gendered pronouns include she, her, hers, and he, him, his, like she ran the marathon. Gender neutral pronouns include they, them, theirs, used in the singular. So I would say they ran the marathon, but I'm talking about one person.
There are also neopronouns that include sie, their, theirs, I am, ers, and pair, per, pers, as well as many others.
Personally, I use all pronouns.
So if you're talking about me, you would say that they love singing.
So at the Taste Center, we whenever we meet a youth, we always ask them what pronouns they would prefer us to call them. It's just kind of a way to let them know that we are a safe place, and wherever they feel who they are, that's we'll respect those pronouns. It can be confusing, and you're going to make mistakes. I've made mistakes. Sometimes it's hard to remember, but the thing is just to apologize and then move on. Usually someone who has different pronouns than what maybe I'm used to or what you're used to, they'll understand as long as you apologize and, just do better next time. So now we have our next slide. It's called Language is Powerful. So we have an ally. Ally is someone who supports equal civil rights, gender equality, and LGBTQ movements and advocates for the community. Androgynous. Now, androgynous is someone who presents as neither female or male. And then we have butch or masculine, someone whose gender expression is masculine. This term can be used as a derogatory term, especially for lesbians. The word butch can be very offending to a lesbian. Some lesbians have, again, like we did with queer, taken the word and flipped it to mean something positive, but it still can be hurtful to some people. So it's very not to use it in that way. Then we have drag. The drag is a very misunderstood misunderstood presentation of entertainment. A lot of people think that drag are just men who want to dress up as women, and that's not true. It's actually someone who's performing and using the persona of drag to be either as a comedian or of or even an actress or actor. So it's the act performing a gender, presenting as a different gender, usually for the purpose of entertainment. If you've ever seen a drag show, they do not, their makeup is very wild. It's very colorful. It's to be a spectacle for you to see something and be entertained. Next, we have misgender and dead name. To refer to someone using a word or pronoun or a name that does not correctly reflect their gender identity, this is offensive and very harmful. You know, I've actually seen this actually happen in one of the clinics that I worked at. It is fixed now in Elmer, but it used to be in Elmer where you would only see the name of their given to their birth. So we did have some OAs unfortunately call someone at their dead name, and that really offended them to the point where they were very upset. And we, you know, we had to take them in and you know, talk through that what happened, and also just inform and give education to the OAs. So, you know, make sure that when you have someone that uses a name that's changed name that's not what they are born with, respect that name and use that. And if you do make a mistake, it does happen, apologize again, and just move forward. So next one is STEM or STEME or STEM. This is used with Black or Latino Latinx, gender neutral word for Latino. That one is a new one. I didn't know that until I looked this one up. The next one is Two-Spirit, a modern umbrella term used within indigenous communities of North America that bridges indigenous and Western understandings of a gender and sexuality. LGBTQ youth population in the United States. So 3.2 million of youth aged 13 to 17 identify as LGBTQ. Of the 3.2 million, 52% are people of color. These numbers represent the 9.5% of the population of youth identify as LGBTQ. Now, 1.4% of the youth in the US identify as trans. 9.2% of all youth identify as gay, lesbian, or bisexual. And 2.2% of youth identify as questioning, whether it comes to their sexual orientation, meaning that they're not sure. They're experimenting. They're not sure if they're gay, straight, or bi, and so they're just working through experimentation of what they're going to be. So next we have historical trauma. Historical trauma is identified as an intergenerational trauma that has been experienced by a collective group of LGBTQ, a group of people. For the LGBTQ people, historical trauma is connecting the violent anti-LGBTQ oppression that this community has experienced throughout the history, from being targeted by the Inquisition and sentenced to death for sodomy in the 13th century, to being arrested and put into concentration camps in Nazi Germany, to being arrested for gathering in public bars or homes by police in the 1950s and 60s, often being sent to psychiatric hospitals where the treatment was either shock therapy, castration, or lobotomy, to watching loved ones and friends die during the AIDS epidemic during the government's lack of response, and to being hunted and brutally murdered like the victims of the Pulse nightclub shooting in Florida, and also to be subject to conversion therapy, which can be emotionally and physically damaging, with the statistics of someone being twice as likely to commit suicide if having undergone conversion therapy. This historical trauma is felt collectively in the community and may develop negative psychological symptoms because of it. The suicide rate and murder rate for LGBTQ people is staggering. A little bit more conversion therapy. It's still happening all over the United States, though it is illegal in most states, but it is happening under radar. For youth, they're also having camps that they are established in different countries to be able to do conversion therapy, where it's more accepted and where LGBTQ laws are still discriminatory. There is a video that I encourage you to check out if you're interested. It's a documentary called Gay and Evangelical Troubled Teens at Christian Reform Camps. It's a camp that was started by an evangelical group from the United States in the Dominican Republic, which is a country next to Haiti. The Dominican Republic's reputation for LGBTQ rights has not been good. Though in 2024, the country did decriminalize LGBTQ, but they did not experience protection under the law. This group was advertising into the evangelical churches that they would provide services for parents who identified as LGBTQ. Parents would pay to send their children to these camps to undergo conversion therapy. In the documentary, it kind of focuses on one boy, and the only way that the boy actually got out of the camp was because his friends and his teachers were actually asking questions and started investigating to find why the boy disappeared. It's really a heartbreaking video to watch, but it's actually pretty also It's also seeing resiliency in the boy, how he encompasses his self of who he really is, and how he moves forward in his life. All right, next slide. So this video is from 60 Minutes, which is a television show on CBS. This is from 1967, Mike Wallace.
The Homosexuals with CBS News correspondent Mike Wallace.
Homosexuality is an enigma. Even in this era of bold sexual mores, it remains a subject that people find disturbing, embarrassing, and the reluctance to discuss it. Yet there is a growing concern about homosexuals in society, about their increasing visibility. In preparing this broadcast, CBS News commissioned a survey by the Opinion Research Corporation into public attitudes toward homosexuality. We discovered that Americans consider homosexuality more harmful to society than adultery, abortion, or prostitution. We shall present other results of the survey later in the broadcast, and we shall investigate some of the medical, legal, and social aspects of homosexuality. Most Americans are repelled by the mere notion of homosexuality. The CBS News survey shows that 2 out of 3 Americans look upon homosexuals with disgust, discomfort, or fear. 1 out of 10 says hatred. A vast majority believe that homosexuality is an illness. Only 10% say it is a crime. And yet, and here's the paradox, the majority of Americans favor legal punishment, even for homosexual acts performed in private between consenting adults. The homosexual, bitterly aware of his rejection, responds by going underground. They frequent their own clubs and bars and coffee houses where they can act out in the fashion that they want to, where they can escape the disapproving eye of the society that they call straight. No one knows exactly how many homosexuals there are in the United States. There is no reliable way to find out, for most of them are unwilling to acknowledge it. The Kinsey Report of 1948 dealt only with white males. It estimated that 1 in 25 is exclusively homosexual throughout his adult life. Other estimates range as high as 1 in 6. The truth lies somewhere in between. And some men venture into homosexual experimentation for a year or two and revert to heterosexuality. Some are bisexual. They marry, have children, and keep their homosexual contacts on the side. This much is certain. Male homosexuals in America number in the millions, and their number is growing. They are attracted mostly to the anonymity that a big city gives them. New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, San Francisco. The permissiveness and the variety of the city draw them. The average homosexual, if there be such, is promiscuous. He is not interested in nor capable of a lasting relationship like that of a heterosexual marriage. His sex life, his love life, consists of a series of chance encounters at the clubs and bars he inhabits, and even on the streets of the city. The one-night stand, these are characteristic of the homosexual relationship. But there are tens of thousands of homosexuals who deplore the tawdry image of the so-called gay life. Architects and lawyers, doctors, teachers, businessmen, men like these, who lead quiet, unexceptionable lives in towns and cities all across the country, much like their heterosexual neighbors. There is just one thing they are said to share with their homosexual brothers.
I was wondering if you think that there are any, quotes, happy homosexuals for whom homosexuality would be, in a way, their best adjustment to life.
The fact that somebody is homosexual, a true obligatory homosexual, automatically rules out the possibility that he will remain happy for long, in my opinion. The stresses and strains the psychic apparatus is subjected to over the years will cause him, in time, I think, to have increasing difficulties. I think the whole idea of saying the happy homosexual is to, again, to create a mythology about the nature of homosexuality. Most people think that homosexuality is confined to major cities. It is not. In 1955, there were reports of a homosexual underworld in Boise, Idaho. Population at the time, 34,000. The people of Boise tried to stamp out homosexuality. They discovered it couldn't be done. In the learning process, everybody suffered. It began with this headline in the Idaho Daily Statesman. The next day, the paper ran an editorial entitled, "Crush the Monster, Crush Homosexuality." The year-long investigation that followed shook Boise to its foundations. Everyone was suspect. Men were afraid to be seen together. Weekly poker games among men who had known each other for years were canceled. There were reports that many high school boys were involved. A prominent banker, a leading attorney were arrested, along with clerks, repairmen, salesmen. Altogether, hundreds were interrogated in this house on a quiet residential street. When it was over, 15 months later, one homosexual was in a state penitentiary with a life sentence. 2 received 15-year terms, 1 10 years, 2 7 years, and scores of lives were ruined. Nonetheless, even though we live in an age of protest and demonstrations, this picket line in front of Independence Hall in Philadelphia on July 4th was met with a degree of disbelief. It was a combined demonstration by various homosexual organizations intent upon raising a cry for their own civil rights. Their chief complaint? That their members are discriminated against, especially by the government. The State Department is very sensitive to the issue of homosexuality. The Mattachine Society picketed the State Department and got this reaction from Dean Rusk.
Well, I understand that we're being picketed by a group of homosexuals. The policy of the department is that we do not employ homosexuals knowingly, and that if we discover homosexuals in our department, we discharge them. It's a department that is concerned with the security of the United States, and that we have to exact standards of conduct which are far higher than the conduct of the general society in which we operate. This has to do with problems of blackmail and problems of personal instability and all sorts of things.
The dilemma of the homosexual. Told by the medical profession he is sick. By the law that he's a criminal. Shunned by employers, rejected by heterosexual society. Incapable of a fulfilling relationship with a woman or, for that matter, with a man. At the center of his life, he remains anonymous, a displaced person, an outsider.
Sorry, Rob, you're on mute.
Sorry about that. Of course, this video was offensive. It was done 57 years ago. But remember, some of those thoughts and some of those feelings that were put in that video are still felt and talked about today. So that language is not over. And that's the reason why I chose to show the video. This next slide right here is the AIDS epidemic. The picture on the top left is actually of a family who was losing their son to AIDS. He had just died. Fact, they used this picture in an ad for mattresses, for hospital mattresses. The family did this to promote language and to make people speak about what was going on with AIDS. On the bottom left is a gentleman who has AIDS who is speaking out his own coffin for his funeral. In the middle picture, we have the AIDS quilt, which was put across the great lawn of the Capitol. Top right, we have a gentleman who's saying goodbye to his partner. And on the bottom right, we have ACT UP, who was a group that stood up for the rights for people who had HIV to get drugs and to get people to investigate it and to do research. I grew up during the AIDS epidemic here in the Valley. And it was pretty scary time. You would see somebody one week and the next week they'd be gone. There was one time when we started, it was about 1988, where they were going to put out a drug called AZT. They were starting the trials. I went with someone to support him to sign up for the trials. We were in a high school gymnasium and the whole gym was packed. It was so full. It was hard to walk because it was so packed in there. It was just staggering how fast people succumbed to the disease through the years. Next slide. This is a very quick video about the AIDS crisis. It takes place into the president's secretary.
A mystery disease known as the gay plague has become an epidemic unprecedented in the history of American medicine. That today from the Center for Disease Control in Atlanta. Topping the list of likely victims are male homosexuals who have many partners and drug users who inject themselves with needles. Medical experts say the disease kills 4 out of every 10 people it strikes and that it threatens to explode in the nation's cities.
Action to the announcement of the Center for Disease Control in Atlanta that AIDS is now an epidemic in over 600 cases. And over a third of them are died. It's known as gay plague. No, it is. I mean, it's a pretty serious thing that 1 in every 3 people that get this have died, and I wonder if the president is aware of it.
I don't have it. Are you? Do you?
You don't have it. Well, I'm relieved to hear that, Larry.
Do you?
No,
You didn't answer my question. How do you know?
Does the president, in other words, the White House looks on this as a great joke.
No, I don't know anything about it, Lester.
Does anybody in the White House know about this epidemic, Larry?
I don't think so. I don't think there's been no personal experience here, Lester.
No, I mean, I thought you were keeping...
I checked thoroughly with Dr. Ruge this morning, and he's had no patients suffered from AIDS or whatever it is.
The president doesn't have gay plague. Is that what you're saying, or what?
No, didn't say that.
Didn't say that.
I thought I heard you on the State Department over there. Why don't you stay over there?
Because I love you, Larry.
Oh, I see. Well, let's don't put it in those terms, Lester.
Oh, I retract that.
I hope so.
Described the president's speech on Saturday as a fairy tale. Is there any reaction to that?
Not true. Fairy tales are not true, and this one's true. Lester's ears perked up when you said fairies. He has an abiding interest in that.
This seems to be a movement in Denver at the Conference of Mayors Convention. Request for federal assistance getting at the AIDS problem. Is there any? The White House.
The president has been involved in briefed on the AIDS situation a number of months ago in a cabinet meeting, and ordered that high priority be given to research matters on it. The Center for Disease Control has been involved for some time. The president will continue to be updated. We have recently asked that $12 million be reprogrammed for research on AIDS. That's the extent of the president's involvement, which has been...
Larry, does the president think that it might help if he suggested that the gays cut down on their cruising?
Told you, didn't I? Told you.
I didn't hear your answer, Larry.
I just was acknowledging your interest in this subject.
You don't think that it would help if the gays cut down on their cruising? It would help.
We're researching it. If we come up with any research that sheds some light on whether gays should cruise or not cruise, we'll make it available to you. Getting a circle now, he's moving in front. Go ahead.
It's the Center for Disease Control in Atlanta. Reports
An AIDS question.
that an estimated,
You were
look,
close.
can I ask a question, Mark?
You were close.
An estimated 300,000 people to AIDS, which can be transmitted through saliva. Will the President, as Commander-in-Chief, take steps to protect armed forces, food and medical services from AIDS patients or those who run the risk of spreading AIDS, in the same manner that they forbid typhoid fever people from being involved in the health or food services? Is the President concerned about this subject, Larry? That
I haven't
seems
heard
to
him
have
express
evoked so much
concern.
jocular.
I haven't heard
It isn't
him
only the
express.
jocks, Lester. Has he sworn off water faucets?
No, but I mean, is he going to do anything, Larry?
Lester, I have not heard him express anything.
You
I'm
mean
sorry.
he has expressed no opinion about this epidemic?
No, but I must confess I haven't asked him about it.
Would you ask him, Larry?
Go back into this problem.
Have you been checked?
President going to
What? I
ban
beg
mouth to
pardon?
mouth
I didn't
kissing?
hear the answer.
Oh, it's hard work. I don't get paid enough. Is there anything else we need to do here?
All right, you can stop the video. That's the end. So now we have disparities for youth, LGBTQ youth. 52% of LGBT youth have been bullied. 56% of LGBTQ youth use drugs and alcohol. 22% of LGBTQ youth have been sexually assaulted. 55% of LGBTQ youth are experiencing depression. 65% of LGBTQ youth are experiencing depression. Are experiencing anxiety. Suicide is the second leading cause of death for youth. LGBTQ youth are more than 4 times as likely to attempt suicide than their heterosexual peers. 41% of LGBTQ youth consider suicide. Youth that have experienced conversion therapy are 2.5 times likely to have reported multiple suicide attempts in the last year. LGBTQ youth have 120% higher risk of becoming unhoused. Up to 40% of the 4.2 million unhoused identify as LGBTQ in 2023. Family rejection is the most common cause of becoming unhoused. Those that do not become unhoused have long-term consequences such as increased risk of exploitation, prostitution, sexual trafficking, violence, sexual violence, and physical abuse, depression, anxiety disorder, suicide, and increased use of substances to cope. Now, this slide is from Riverside. As you see on the left, it shows the suicide ideation by grade and sex. But I want to look over to the right slide, which is suicide ideation by sexual orientation. For grade 7, 45% of LGBTQ people have had suicide ideation compared to 9% of grade 7, which are heterosexuals. For grade 9, it's still 41%. Heterosexuals, it is 11%. And for the people who are not sure whether they're heterosexual or homosexual, are 24%. And then on grade 11, it still stays at 41%, which is very high for the heterosexual, which is 11%. Next slide. So how does sexual orientation, gender identity, and gender expression develop in adolescence? Well, it varies with every youth. It depends on how comfortable they feel about who they are and how they feel, and also how safe they feel the environment is for them to express those feelings. The environment that they are surrounded is key to how they will develop. Usually children begin to develop with their gender identity and sexual orientation at a very young age, though the process varies for everyone. For gender identity, around age 2, children start to recognize physical differences between boys and girls. By age 3, most children can label themselves as a boy or a girl. By age 4, children typically have a stable sense of their gender identity. Now, sexual orientation, this can be more fluid and may not become clear until later in adolescence or even adulthood. Some youth may be aware of their sexual orientation from a young age, while others may take longer to understand and express it. Stigma plays a big part in this. It's important to provide supportive environments where children and adolescents can explore and express their identities safely. Here is where I would like to bring back those questions that I asked in the first slide. When did you know that you were heterosexual or female or male? You might think those are ridiculous questions to ask. Most people would say that they knew those things their entire life. They never had to think about it. Now put yourself in an adolescent's shoes when they're asked those questions. We all know innately who we are from a very young age. We may be able to put it into words, but we know that well, some of us that we're different. The difference comes from what we see in the media and social settings. We also learn quickly not everyone will accept our differences. And we learn that we must be careful and cautious because it's not always safe to be us. Next slide.
The U.S. State Department is issuing a global security alert ahead of Pride Month. That starts June 1st. The department warns there is a growing risk of terror attacks against LGBTQ people worldwide. The FBI issued a similar warning this week. Officials want any U.S. citizen planning to travel overseas to be extra cautious near Pride events.
The Colorado Republican Party is calling on people to burn all gay pride flags and proclaiming in a mass email to supporters that, quote, God hates pride. The Republican Party's message attacks so-called godless groomers and echoes the anti-gay slur used by the Westboro Baptist Church in its infamous protests. The GOP's email said, God hates flags. The Colorado GOP's move toward extremism has also recently included a call for all parents to pull their children out of public schools, saying that Democrats are using schools to turn more kids trans. The head of the Log Cabin Republicans of Colorado, an LGBTQ conservatives group, called the leadership of the Colorado GOP morons and said that the anti-gay message was hateful. Valdemar Archuleta, who's also the Republican candidate for Congress and the safely Democratic 1st Congressional District in Denver, renounced his party's endorsement today.
A new report from California's Attorney General's office found there were 391 reported hate crimes directed at the gay community between 2021 and 2022. That's a 29% increase over the year before. The report also found 45 hate crimes motivated by anti-transgender or anti-gender nonconforming bias. That's up 55% from the previous year. And when it comes to California's youngest residents, the report says LGBTQ plus children are victimized and bullied at rates 4 times higher than non-LGBTQ plus children, and nearly half of all gay youth seriously considered suicide in 2022.
The U.S.
So, in conclusion, how do we serve this community better? I'm hoping some of you are coming away with the realization that serving this culture can be complicated at best. The LGBTQIA people have been silenced for so long and have had to hide themselves from their loved ones and even sometimes from themselves. The community had to learn to live in the shadows, to be invisible in order to survive. This invisibility still stays with the community in the media and in public mind at large. Though the community has stood up and fought for its rights, a louder voice of fear and untruths still bangs its drum. It's easier to believe the untruths and fears than ask the important questions and search for those answers. We as mental health workers need to show them compassion, understanding of why the disparities for this community are so high. We need to take the time to be culturally competent and learn all we can learn and be humble enough to know that we have more to learn. Now, why is it important to celebrate Pride every year? It is to celebrate the people that rose above the oppression and hate and fear. And it's also a reminder that basic human rights can't be taken for granted. If history has taught us anything, it's that these rights are fragile and can be taken away. And when or if that happens again, we as a people will rise and remind people that where we came from and where we are going. We are here and we have always been here. We are co-workers, we are friends, your sons and daughters, your brothers and sisters. And though we carry years of historical trauma and pain, we are a rich, diverse people with an abundance of resiliency and hope for the future. We all carry biases. I mean, we're human, right? Yet to do no harm and to serve this community better, we must train our staff to put those biases aside and to be open-hearted as well as open-minded. Thank you.
Wow, Rob, thank you so much. That was an amazing presentation and really set this solid foundation for diving a little bit deeper into the arena related to suicide. So thank you so very much. For sake of time, I'm going to move us right into our next presenter, but we hope that you'll stay with us. And as there may be any questions for Rob, you can feel free, everyone, to put them in the chat, and Rob can stick around, and then we'll have open Q&A for both presenters as we get toward the end of our time together. So thank you again, Rob, and I would like now to take a moment to introduce our next presenter, Paul Baum. Paul began his journey as a peer support specialist, pursued higher education, and is now a licensed clinical social worker. Paul's experience includes serving as lead therapist with the Riverside County Mobile Crisis Management Team. Paul also served as student supervisor for Renewing Hope Strategies, focusing on therapy for LGBTQ+ youth and mentoring students, many of which hope to specialize in working with LGBTQ+ youth one day. Paul also served as lead trainer and consultant with Renewing Hope Family Counseling Center. Paul's received specialized training in transdiagnostic LGBTQ affirmative cognitive behavioral therapy from Yale University and World Professional Association of Transgender Health, general and advanced training. Paul also founded Victoria Community Counseling and serves as the CFO, secretary, and business owner. Please join me in welcoming Paul Baum. You are muted, Paul.
There we go. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Diana, for the introduction too. I'm so honored to be here today. My name is Paul Baum, and I am here to present on suicide risk factors and protective factors for our LGBTQ+ youth, guide creating supportive community. Rob, amazing job. I mean, truly, truly. I would love to follow up with you too. I want to share a little bit about my background, the reason I'm here. So as Diana gave a brief introduction, I began as a peer support specialist with Riverside University Health System Behavioral Health about 10 years ago, and just honored to be able to share my lived experience, which I will share briefly today because I find it very impactful in presentations, as well as some of my clinical findings through the last 5 years serving as a clinical therapist and a licensed clinical social worker. I went on to pursue my higher education, becoming a licensed clinical social worker, LCSW. I graduated from Loma Linda University, and I will tell you one of the questions that I asked, because it is a private Christian Seventh-day Adventist university, I said, I want you to know that I am going to be doing studies on LGBTQ+ youth, and in particular transgender. Does this coincide with your mission? The person that interviewed me was, we want you, we absolutely do. So I think it's important to ask those questions. I was also a lead therapist for the Mobile Crisis Management Team, and I believe that's very important to talk about today because crisis services are so important when it comes to suicidality and LGBTQ youth. And I will tell you that there was definitely a disproportionate amount of LGBTQ+ youth in that mobile crisis setting as well, due to some risk factors that Rob already brought up, and I'll bring up some of those as well. I'm current supervisor for Renewing Hope Strategies, which is the nonprofit serving for Renewing Hope. I focus on therapy for LGBTQ+ youth and mentoring students specializing their studies in LGBTQ+ youth populations as well. Some of my professional achievements, as Diana had said, the World Professional Association of Transgender Health General and Advanced Training. I highly want to recommend taking that training if you've not had an opportunity and you're either a peer support or paraprofessional or a clinician. It was an excellent training. It is the gold standard, and IHP will sponsor that from time to time, and I'm very grateful for that partnership. Also had an opportunity in working with Rainbow Pride Youth Alliance to do a specific training of transdiagnostic LGBTQ plus youth, LGBTQ affirmative cognitive behavioral therapy out of Yale University. And that's a brand new training. A lot of folks, and I'll get into that clinical findings in a little bit, but a lot of the findings are that, hey, traditional therapy may not be used for multicultural settings. Sometimes we need a modification to that. Was also awarded a contract for LGBTQ plus youth as LCSW with Rainbow Pride Youth Alliance, which is one of our neighboring organizations that serve LGBTQ plus youth. Was also in Toastmasters, got a Professional Excellence Award, and founded Victoria Community Counseling. Okay. So some of the learning objectives today, and I am going to keep a very strict time. I got my timer right in front of me. One of the skills I learned in Toastmasters, so I'll keep a very close eye on that. So with the learning objectives, I have 5 that are identified. Identifying ways to increase community collaboration, increasing cultural competency within LGBTQ plus youth or serving, improving inclusion within the decision-making process, encouraging a wellness-focused recovery resilience approach, and integrating support services as well. So today's overview, there's going to be 3 main parts on this. I have expanded a little bit. I actually added 2 slides as people were responding to the poll and as Rob was presenting, because, and the reason is, this is evolving. You'll see some statistics from 1985, 1995, with the Trevor Project. Some of the most recent stuff is from 2022. It takes a while to get these statistics out. And as Rob mentioned, and some of the videos mentioned, people may not self-report because there is that fear. So understanding suicide risk factors for LGBTQ plus youth, identifying protective factors, right? We don't want just the problem, but we want a solution there. And then establishing suicide prevention efforts, which I truly believe that PEI is doing a great job with. The ASSIST training, the other trainings, absolutely phenomenal. Today's main takeaway, understanding suicide risk factors and warning signs, recognize risk factors and warning signs associated with suicidal behavior. Effective communication strategies, skills for open, empathetic conversations about suicide, fostering a supportive environment. Intervention and crisis response. Mostly I'm focusing there on resources, practicing for intervening during a suicidal crisis, providing immediate support, safety planning, crisis resources. I truly believe that PEI does a great job with this, with the ASSIST training, with some of the other trainings. That's where 1 hour is not going to do justice for this entire umbrella. There will be follow-up, and I will provide my contact information at the very end as well for follow-up if people need support. Reducing stigma and promoting mental health, encourage a culture of acceptance and understanding. And as I was doing some of my research, there definitely are community organizations doing this. So understanding suicide risk factors for LGBTQ plus youth. These are just a few of the statistics I got from 2 different resources. I'll cite those at the very end. Most of what I pulled from was the Trevor Project, which is more of a national, where Rob was focused more specifically in Riverside County. So suicide, 1 in 5 LGBTQ plus youth attempted suicide, according to the survey cited. LGBTQ plus youth are 4 times more likely to attempt suicide than their peers, and 45% of LGBTQ plus youth have considered suicide. And that was based upon the 2020 to 22 study from the Trevor Project. So bullying and discrimination. How does bullying and discrimination contribute to increased suicide risks? I want to share a personal story here and also some clinical findings through my experience. I was struggling a little bit and going, do I want to do videos? Do I want to do, let me incorporate some real life stuff. That's why I'm here live. I could have pre-recorded this, but was asked to be here in video live. So I want to share some real life experience. Coming out can be a very, very hard process. I've probably worked with 100+ LGBTQ youth. I was one of those youth. That is a big part of the reason why I chose a clinical career. Bullying in childhood, for me, started in junior high, if not a little bit earlier. Rob mentioned in his presentation about the word queer now being a very strong word and taking the power back. However, in my youth, it was a game called Smear the Queer, where basically bullying, tackling, beating someone up, okay? We see this, and what this led to for me, I'll say personally, was severe depression, severe anxiety, okay? And I didn't have the voice and I didn't have the safety in the community that I do today. I speak from a place of privilege and honor that I have an opportunity today to live. I tell people I've had my 9 lives. I'm that cat that's lived 9 lives. And today I can speak up and work with youth that are struggling with similar issues, that are coming to me and saying, hey, Paul, my family is bullying me. The students in class are bullying me. I'm getting beat up. And it's a travesty. And this is a dark issue. I will shed some light a little bit later in the presentation, but this is very difficult. I will tell you, and this may be triggering for some people, but it's the reality that people face. I recall, and this was only about 20 years ago, in the realm of my life, that's not that long ago, looking over the 210 freeway and contemplating ended it all. That happened for months at a time. Very difficult to overcome. I'm grateful that I had people in my world, in my life, to reach out to and say, hey, I'm suffering here. I'm going through this. I want to let you know, teachers, educators, parents, your youth, many of them, as the statistics show, 45%, have contemplated or are contemplating. This is the reality. I do not want to sugarcoat this. This is real. And the reason I bring this up is because it needs to be talked about. When people are being bullied, discriminated against, it happens. And I will also tell you that I'm coming from a place of privilege as a white man. People of color, darker, much darker than me, I'm pretty pale, go through a lot more. Trans people go through a lot more. I identify as a gay male. If I was Black, trans, and gay, think about how much more difficult that is. So I just want to bring this to light. And hopefully people are still here and didn't leave, because I know that was difficult to talk about. Family rejection. Impacts on LGBTQ+ youth mental health. And this is partly from the Trevor Project and partly from Family Project, our family acceptance project from San Francisco State University. Studies have shown fewer than 1 in 3 transgender and non-binary youth found their home to be gender affirming. Let that sink in for a moment. Fewer than 1 in 3. LGBTQ youth who felt high social support from their family reported attempting suicide at less than half the rate of those who felt low or moderate social support. less than half. This is an opportunity for us to love our families, to help other families that are suffering, to talk to parents and let them know this information. As a clinician, I sometimes have to, as a therapist, talk to parents and say, I realize this is a struggle for you, accepting your child as they are. The difference in acceptance and not is mortality. Is it going to bother you more having a gay son, a trans son, a lesbian daughter, a trans daughter, or having them perish and be deceased? And sometimes those are the real conversations that I have to have with families, and it is tough. So I will share that. I encourage people to have that conversation and really speak up, but also get that training on how to have those conversations as well. I will tell you that most families that I talk to, once the youth are okay with me talking to them, turns out fairly well, because the youth feel safe in talking to me and other providers that are affirming and really uplifting, and it connects that family bond. So risk factor, internalized homophobia and transphobia. Internalized homophobia represents the gay person's direction of negative social attitudes toward the self. And in its extreme forms, it can lead to rejection of one's sexual orientation. Internalized homophobia is further characterized by intrapsychic conflict between experiences of the same sex affection of desire and feeling a need to be heterosexual. There are theories of identity development. I encourage you to take a look at it your free time. This will be available, I believe, by the county website and also by video. Cass has a really great model that I've used and I do use in therapy as well. Further, moreover, rising transphobia and identity non-affirmation coupled with concealment of one's identity was associated with increased odds for non-suicidal self-injury, suicidal behavior, and hospitalization. A history of mental illness, including depression, anxiety, and post-traumatic stress, was significantly associated with suicidal behavior. Okay. Self-acceptance is a big thing. There's a reason there's coming out days. And I do not tell all of the youth that I work with, you just need to come out, because it may not be safe. However, the first step in the process is one of self-acceptance, self-love, empowerment, self-advocacy, and really identifying self and getting that support from at least one healthy adult can change the whole picture of where they're at. Risk factor for mental health challenges. And I'm going to go a little bit further into this area because I am an LCSW, licensed clinical social worker, and also a therapist. That is my main job. Mental health challenges. Common mental health issues include depression, anxiety, also post-traumatic stress disorder. However, in research, and I'll update this. However, they were more there for depression and anxiety, and that's why I'm highlighting this. But as the prior slide said, trauma, bullying, risk of life, all of these sort of things will also take impact in this. Common mental health issues include depression, anxiety. 73% of LGBTQ youth reported experiencing symptoms of anxiety, including more than 3/4 of transgender and non-binary youth and nearly 2/3 of cisgender youth. This is a high number. 73%. This is a lot. This is the reason I believe there is a disproportionate amount of folks seeking mental health treatment. This is my belief in why, with the Mental Health Services Act, there's 5 underserved populations and LGBTQ is one of them, because there is a disproportionate amount of folks suffering. 58% of LGBTQ youth reported experiencing symptoms of depression, including nearly 2/3 of transgender and non-binary youth, and nearly half of cisgender youth. Although our data continue to show high rates of mental health and suicide risk among LGBTQ young people, it is crucial to note that these rates vary widely based on the way LGBTQ youth are treated. And this is coming from Dr. Maisha Price, Senior Research Scientist from the Trevor Project. That's going to be part of our risk factors, but moving into solutions. Some trends and trend lines in LGBTQ youth mental health and suicide risk. This is from the Trevor Project. So you can see symptoms of anxiety from 2020 to 2022, trend lines increasing a little bit. Same for depression, though with hope, it came down a bit, 4% in 2022, which is good. Probably some of that in what I've seen clinically is coming out of the COVID pandemic, the isolation, the social isolation that people were facing that definitely had an impact on their social surroundings. If you can imagine the homes not having support in the home and then not being able to go to school physically, not being able to go out due to COVID, that would definitely impact these numbers. Considered suicide, 40, 42, and then jumped to 45. That trend line is not going down. I've seen higher numbers as well, and I'm sure we all have. Attempted suicide, 15, 14. That number is pretty consistent. That's a very high number. That is a very high number. When we think about a grade in school and it's less than 70, no, this is mortality. These are lives. This is serious stuff. Risk factor 5, lack of access to affirming healthcare. This is very important. And I will say that I do not believe there are enough providers that are part of community, much less affirming of community. I will tell you this because I know that at Renewing Hope, I was completely full within the first month with referrals, and people continuously trying to find a provider with knowledge and experience working with transgender individuals, not just affirming, but with lived experience and also the ability to relate as well. And I'll jump into that importance of peer support in a moment as well. So lack of access to affirming healthcare exacerbates the risk of suicide. Examples of barriers faced by LGBTQ plus youth in healthcare settings, these are just a few, okay? Rob pointed to that in just talking about electronic health records in lobbies and people getting dead named, people getting called the wrong pronouns. I'm grateful, and I worked for Riverside for a long time, so grateful that there were people in leadership there that listened, that said, hey, this is really impacting people. This hurts when they're getting dead named in the lobby. And they were able to step up and go, hey, this is a big technical challenge. However, it matters and lives matter. And so I've seen that through working in private practice and also for the county, them moving toward let's come up with a solution. And that gives me hope, and I hope it gives other hope. If you don't have that in your school setting, in your work setting, I want to encourage you to ask for that and advocate for that. So barriers, dead naming, right? We went over that earlier. If somebody's name on birth is, just say mine's Paul, but I identify as transgender and my name is Mary, right? That's going to hurt. That's going to hurt real bad. Because there's already that internalized, as we talked about, bullying, family acceptance, etc. Now I'm going to a place of healthcare, and I'm still not getting it. Think about that trifecta: school bullying, family acceptance, healthcare setting. We are the opportunity at schools and healthcare to give these folks an opportunity. Protective factors for LGBTQ plus youth. Family acceptance. And with that, I have cited a little bit with the Family Acceptance Project out of San Francisco State University. Highly recommended. Highly recommended. They have a lot of research going back over 20 years. Supportive school environments, peer support, and LGBTQ plus youth, LGBTQ plus communities, access to affirming mental health services, inclusive policies and legislation. Okay. So family acceptance. Family acceptance of LGBTQ youth protects against suicide, depression, and substance abuse, and predicts better health and self-esteem. This is research by the Family Acceptance Project out of San Francisco State University. I have that as cited at the very end. Please check it out when you have time. I cannot go over that in an hour presentation. It would take weeks. LGBTQ youth who felt high social support from their family reported attempting suicide at less than half the rate of those who felt low or moderate social support. Think about that, okay? 45% was the number in 2022, according to the Trevor Project, bringing that down to 22, okay? Which probably is going to cut the mortality rate in half. Is that enough? No, it's not, but it is a start. And this is one protective factor. Approximately 1/5 of participants with moderate levels of familial rejection had thought about suicide in the 6 months before the survey, and over 1/3 of the same participants had attempted suicide at least once before. When parents demonstrate support for their LGBTQ plus children, they can influence the youth's well-being outcomes, including decreasing rates of suicide and mitigating effects of bullying. But additional factors beyond familial support are still needed to ensure LGBTQ plus well-being. And that was a research study, a little bit older, but also very relevant as well. Parents can also contribute to their LGBTQ plus children's well-being by advocating for them at school, advocating for use of bathrooms that align with their children's gender identity, demanding more LGBTQ plus inclusive school policies, which we'll talk about a little bit about that at the end, and one that gives me hope that was just voted on last month, or just presented last month. I'll talk about at the end of the presentation, which has specifically been related with lower levels of depression and increased levels of self-esteem for LGBTQ plus youth. Supportive school environments. I saw in the survey that, and I'm so glad they did the survey and shared the results too, because it does seem like there's a lot of people from schools, parents, school people. This is a big thing, especially right now. They spend most of their time there. And if they don't have supportive environments at home, where is their supportive environment? Likely at school. LGBTQ youth who found their school to be LGBTQ affirming reported lower rates of attempting suicide from the Trevor Project. Having a GSA, or Gender and Sexuality Alliance on campus encourages learning about LGBTQ plus topics, the history and practice protective school policies. GSA, or maybe referred to Gay Straight Alliances, in middle school aim to improve the lives of LGBTQ plus students. GSAs address campus climate issues, advocate for campus change. If all students had more protective school climates, such as GSAs, LGBTQ plus curriculum, LGBTQ plus supportive services, and protective school policies, it would reduce suicidal ideation of LGBTQ plus youth. I shared with you at the very beginning, and there's a reason why, that I was one of the therapists and the lead therapist for Mid-County mobile crisis management team for youth. Okay, I did see there a lot of schools that were great when it came to supporting LGBTQ plus youth. There was probably, I would say, close to half of the people that I served identified as LGBTQ plus. Now, when they had supportive counselors, I noticed a big shift. The counselors would call the crisis teams right away and say, hey, support our youth. Okay. Other ones, I don't know. I probably didn't hear from. And they may have been overlooked. And think about the other thing too. Are they going to feel safe enough to open up about these things if they're not heard, if they're not affirmed, if they're not validated? LGBTQ plus youth experience greater school connectedness, greater appreciation for diversity, feel supported in coming out as LGBTQ plus, have higher academic achievements, lower rates of truancy, lower rates of substance use. So those who have greater school connectedness, right? The reason for a GSA, the reason for, and I'll plug this because I've participated some with them, Kiwanis LGBT, doing service projects in the community, specifically for LGBTQ on campuses. That Gay Straight Alliances, other community providers coming in to help, but also the school themselves really helping and helping them feel connected and supported. Protective factor 3, peer support in LGBTQ plus communities. LGBTQ youth who live in community that is accepting of LGBTQ people reported significantly lower rates of attempting suicide than those who do not, according to the Trevor Project Study 2022. I will say, and I will uplift Riverside County, RUHS in particular, for being a leader in hiring peer supports, hiring not only affirming peer supports, but people with lived experience, multicultural, that are part of the LGBT community, that are transgender. I had an opportunity to work with many, interview many, was one myself there. And I think when we have that, and I think integrating that even in schools potentially may be very powerful, maybe an opportunity to help them connect. Sometimes it's hard to open up to somebody that's cisgender, that is not transgender, because they may not understand in the same way. Similar to, I can't ever be, talking to a female and saying, oh, I know exactly what it's like to be a female. No, I don't. I don't have the slightest clue of what it's like. So having those peer supports with the lived experience is very powerful. I had an opportunity when I was with the county and the Family Advocate Program to do an LGBTQ family group. I was very fearful on my interview that they'd be like, your idea of family is skewed from our idea. Okay, I will tell you that family, okay, is for the LGBTQ plus community sometimes is chosen family. We choose our family. Rob talked about drag and the history of drag and being misunderstood. Okay, there's a reason why there's drag daughters and there's drag homes. It used to be to where they're congregating, and that is the safe space. That is the living environment. And so I want to think about this when we think about peer supports, when we talk about community and really connecting. Riverside County and the Inland Empire is such a sprawl in land base, okay? Western region is somewhat pretty unified, okay? It's a little bit denser, but smaller land area. Mid-County is very spread, very different. You've got some pretty rigid cities like Murrieta and Temecula and Hemet out there that can be a little bit oppressive, and have actually passed, with Murrieta School District in particular, passed a school policy outing or forcing outing of students. There is an article, I'll talk about that in a little bit too. So the success of peer support is going to be huge within communities. I do want to encourage reaching out to the peer support programs from Riverside County. Rob's a senior peer. I know there's a lot of other folks there. I don't want to out anybody during a presentation, but there are other folks within the LGBTQ plus community. So protective factor 4, access to affirming mental health services. Importance of them. Social workers receive minimal training in their graduate programs on youth suicide and LGBTQ plus populations. Therefore, opportunities must be developed and implemented to prepare practicing social workers on affirming practices with LGBTQ plus youth who are at risk for suicide. Social work graduate programs and continuing education training programs should develop curriculums that include learning about the unique struggles LGBTQ plus youth experience. Role play scenarios aimed at crisis de-escalation and suicide prevention, and information on how to work with parents and families so that they may better understand the unique needs of their child who is LGBTQ plus and who may also be struggling with suicidality. Got a lot of intersectionality there between the mental health, the sexuality, the gender identity, for social workers, for therapists, for teachers, for parents to understand this. I do believe that we need to continually educate ourselves. And I'm grateful to be here today to begin that process. And definitely, you know, there is a lot of resources out there, and I'll provide my information as well. Examples of effective mental health interventions. As I shared, Yale University has one, a CBT, transdiagnostic for LGBTQ. That is a newer training that I believe is very good. Family Acceptance Project talks about trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy as being a leader as well. And there are quite a few others. Now, other effective mental health interventions are not just clinical, are not just therapy. Peer support is another very effective mental health intervention. Connecting with somebody like me. If they can see somebody that's a healthy adult, that's similar to them, and connect with them, they have an opportunity to open up, to advocate, to shine. As a peer support, I recall working in clinics, helping the people feel comfortable enough to actually begin to talk to a therapist, to actually begin to talk to parents and families, because sometimes they need that one supporter. Protective, and also groups, I will say that too. Peer groups, therapy groups, community groups, support groups, GSAs. Protective factor 5, inclusive policies and legislation. And I just want to say the sign language interpreter is doing an amazing job, because I talk very fast sometimes because it's a lot of content to go through. So I just want to uplift our interpreters as well. Impact of inclusive policies and anti-discrimination laws. And this is what I was talking about earlier. Forced outing policies remove opportunities for LGBTQ plus students to build trust and seek out resources that best fit their coming out experience. From Tony Huang, Executive Director of Equality California. Huang called the bill timely and necessary in the fight against extremist politicians and school boards imposing local policy contravening state and federal law designed to protect student privacy. He urged Governor Newsom to sign the bill quickly. During debate on the assembly floor, critics of the bill called it a blanket ban that infringes on parental rights. And we're talking about outing students, okay? Which if they do not have an accepting home, we talked about the suicide rates already. What's gonna happen? And I know we have an election coming up. I'm not gonna tell y'all how to vote. I'm gonna say, think about the lives, think about the safety, think about the safety of the LGBTQ folks and suicide as a whole, and how laws and how legislation may impact their lives. As a social worker, I have to think through that lens. It is not just the person in front of me, it is upstream, because this is flowing fast when it comes to our community and when it comes to safety and suicide. In 2023, at least 10 California school districts adopted policies requiring school staff to out students to their potentially unsupportive parents without the student's permission. Again, think about the impacts when it comes to safety and suicide. According to the ACLU, American Civil Liberties Union, Northern California, all of these policies seemingly violate long-standing California law and Department of Education guidances, but yet still passed. In April, and I apologize, it's a little bit hard to see, LGBTQnation.com on the, according to LGBTQnation.com, the board of the Murrieta Valley Unified School District voted to ignore an order from the state of California to rescind the district's discriminatory policy requiring educators in Riverside County to out any trans or non-binary student who asked to be called by a name or pronoun different from the ones listed on their birth certificate. Blatantly refused, outing them. Think about the statistics when we talked about the risk factors and the impacts this may cause. And that reference is from LGBTQnation.com. How policy can create a safer environment for our LGBTQ plus youth. I'm very grateful for this. I will tell you as one person. I don't know if everybody here agrees with me, but I think about the people that I serve. I think about our youth as a whole. I think about our LGBTQ youth and the people's lives that are endangered, okay? The California Assembly voted by a wide margin in June 2024, just last month, to pass legislation protecting students in the state from forced outing. Governor Gavin Newsom is expected to sign the bill into law. Okay. AB 1955, known as the Safety Act, strengthens existing California law prohibiting school districts from enacting any policy requiring staff to disclose information about a student's sexual orientation, gender identity, or gender expression to anyone without the student's consent. And I know some parents may disagree with this. I realize that. They may want to know if they are supportive parents. I'm hoping that with GSAs, the students feel comfortable enough to share with parents if they're supportive parents. It's going to be a hard conversation though, okay? We balance that between parents' rights and the lives of our youth. They're not always in sync. And this is what we need to think about when it comes to this, when it comes to legislation. If you're that parent that wants to know, you're likely asking that question and providing that safe environment, okay? And that's what I would urge is to ask. If there's questions, ask. Watch a show with them. Do something that's showing support. If you think they are, have that conversation. All right, so I want to go into suicide prevention efforts, community education and awareness by some of these agencies. So importance of community education and reducing stigma. We know, thinking about family acceptance, thinking about the laws that have passed in Murrieta School District going blatantly against the state of California, we know there's still stigma. We know there is. Within mental health, within the LGBTQ community, okay? I do believe we've come a long way, but I will also say that it was not that long ago when I remember Prop 8 passing, can't get married. I remember fear of that happening again when new leadership took office, okay? I will tell you that I'm a person that I was like, I want my rights. I need to jump on this, okay? Our youth do not have that opportunity to act independently always, to speak up for themselves. And that's the importance of us speaking up for them and helping them. So community education awareness, I do believe that education is a vital necessity that's going to help us really bridge that gap. The more educated we are on these topics, the easier it is going to be to have that conversation regarding suicide, regarding sexuality, regarding gender, and loving the people that we deep down do love already. This can also help others. So just a few of the resources. Each Mind Matters, California's mental health movement, Knowing the Signs, Suicide's Preventable, Directing Change. Directing Change is awesome. If you have not seen it before, there are some amazing suicide prevention videos. I know they're on YouTube. I know they're all over. Students do this, and it's awesome. It's empowering. I've had an opportunity to meet with some students that have done this before at different schools, or the faculty there. I've had an opportunity to judge this, and it's really a great program because it talks about that. If you have a loved one that think may be struggling, some of these resources may save their life. Even if we don't know exactly how to have that conversation yet, provide a resource, provide connection, help them in any way you can. The Trevor Project is also awesome because it not only provides a lot of research and education, but it also provides a text line, a chat line, a phone line to help connect with somebody, and particularly for LGBTQ+ youth. I've used this for a lot of folks and provided this resource to family, to youth, and they've used it. A few that I have not plugged that are not on here, Take My Hand, I believe, is another great one. That peer chat line through Riverside County, awesome, awesome, awesome. I've had people use that and connect directly with the peer support to help with resources. Sometimes it's a matter of giving somebody a resource, helping them connect. Trainings, I'm not going to go through the plethora of them because I'm sure that Diana and her team will probably go through them all later. But the RUHS behavioral health PEI programs, such as the ASSIST training, the Safe Talk training, and all those, awesome, awesome. I was able to do those when I was with Riverside County, and I'm looking forward to doing them again in about 2 months. I don't believe once we're trained, we know everything. I think this is a continual thing of learning, of updating, of using the information that we're provided here. Family Acceptance Project, which I'll have on the next slide, really, really great for families, for educators. They have posters, they have everything that you could even put up at your schools, you could put up in your communities, things that are going to help connect the family and the students. Because the reality of it is, if they're not at home, they're at school. If they're not at school, they're at home. That is typically their two environments. If we can create a safe space at school and help the parents create a safe space at home, I believe that the suicide rate will drop from that abysmal 45% contemplation and 14% completion. Some suicide prevention efforts, some crisis intervention services, just a few of them. The crisis intervention services, specifically with the county, I know the mobile crisis teams pretty well. So I think Riverside is one of the leaders definitely when it comes to crisis intervention services. They have their CBAT team that rolls out with officers and with a mental health therapist. One of my dear friends is actually on one of those teams and shares stories, not breaching confidentiality, of course, but sharing stories of, we helped this person, or we lost a life, and I was able to connect with the family and talk to the family and meet them with compassion and empathy and love. Or we saved a life. So they have those teams. They have other crisis teams to roll out. The National Suicide Hotline, the 988 number, very good resource. Crisis text line, Trevor Project. I'm sure there's a plethora of others that I'm not thinking of right now that can be discussed in the future as well. There are services out there. There is help. So examples of barriers faced by LGBTQ plus youth in healthcare settings. So this is how healthcare providers can support the youth, okay? Honoring their name. Rob talked about, some serious good changes within Riverside and the Elmer system, their electronic health record system, of changing that to where now we have a pronoun. Now we have a name that we're honoring. I know within my practices, we also have that too. There's the name and in the parentheses, their dead name. And so everybody sees that name and honors that name and sees their gender identity as well, has access to their sexuality as well and demographics to be able to support them and help them. So honoring their name, using correct pronouns. I'll review that if people do not know, but there are a lot of pronouns. So my pronouns are he, him, his. It's one of the first things that I'll ask somebody when they walk into the clinic, when they walk in, how do you identify? What are your pronouns? It's as easy as that sometimes. They will usually tell you. Some of the youth use a lot of pronouns that I'd never heard of in my whole life, and I continue to learn and learn and learn and learn and learn. 5 years ago, it was they, them, their. Now there's about 25 others. And so for me, it's meeting them where they're at. It's going, you are the expert of your life. I'm here to be a caveat and help you through this process and support you and affirm you and validate you so that you can be an amazing person for the rest of your life and not a short amount of time. So that you can be that person that's inspired to move forward and help others. Because I believe that is our future. It's going to be people surviving and helping others. Providing affirming care. Oh, I got a little typo there. Providing affirming care. Continual provider training in gender affirming care. One of them is going to be WPATH, I think, is really good for gender affirming care. World Professional Association of Transgender Health. They are a leader, national, and like I said, sometimes IHP will actually provide assistance, financial support assistance for that training as well. and also connecting to a peer support that aligns with the client's gender identity, sexuality, and or culture. And so sometimes, and the reason I bring that up is this, okay? I may be part of community, but I'm also middle-aged. I'm also a white man. I'm also a man, and I'm cisgender, okay? I am part of community, but a small portion of community. We have a lot of intersectionality with our community, and that needs to be addressed as well. So thinking about that intersectionality when we do hire peer supports, when we do hire clinicians, let's help them find somebody that's a healthy adult that represents who they are. All right, so, let's create a supportive environment. I'm sure you all are already doing your darndest to do this because I believe in people. Let's create a supportive environment. Use inclusive language. Okay, we talked about pronouns. We talked about their chosen name. Rob went through a whole list of different acronyms and different language. But really, the one thing that I've found, and over the years, and also in my own treatment and my own recovery, a way to learn that inclusive language, ask. Ask. Start that conversation. Use their pronouns, use their name that they want to go by, and help by asking those questions. Display LGBTQ plus friendly materials. You don't have to develop this yourself. There's other agencies that have it. There's Family Acceptance Projects, there's Trevor Project, there's RUHS. There's a lot of different agencies that are awesome and have that friendly material. Rainbow Pride Youth Alliance, supporting LGBTQ plus organizations, okay? And that doesn't just mean financially. That could mean volunteer. That could mean refer somebody. That could mean a lot of different things. And be an advocate. Help the person advocate and speak up for themselves too. Speak up for others when you see injustice in your workplace, when you see injustice or rooms of improvement in the schools, in the healthcare settings, etc. Some other ways to help: listen without judgment. Validate their feelings. Okay. We don't have to agree with every single thing, but let them know that they're heard. Let them know that what they're saying matters. If they are speaking up and saying, hey, I had the thought of suicide, a reaction could be, I really appreciate you sharing that with me. Can I offer you some resources? Can I sit with you for a while? Can I help get you help? Okay. So sometimes it's going to be as simple as that. Or is there another supporter you need me to call? Offer support and resources. Be an ally. Together, we can create a supportive community. Let's work towards a future where all youth can thrive. Just some resources here, and this will be available in the presentation, the Trevor Project, Crisis Text Line, GLAD, PFLAG, Parents and Friends of Lesbians and Gays, NAMI, Trans Lifeline, Rainbow Pride Youth Alliance, Riverside County Suicide Prevention Coalition, National Suicide Hotline, RUHS PEI. Those are just a few of them. I could probably go on forever. Some references used in my presentation: the Trevor Project, Family Acceptance Project, Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. And next part's question. And then also I have my contact information on here where you can find me. Our slogan is we create an affirming environment that embraces the authenticity of all people. And I stand by that. And I thank you so much for your time today. I'm truly, truly honored to be asked to be a speaker. I'm humbled and I'm honored, and I thank you all so much for listening attentively today as well.
Thank you, Paul, for that fabulous presentation. Much, much appreciated. We had some chatter in the chat throughout your presentation, so folks have been adding in some great resources and the links to some of the things that you mentioned. There are a few questions, so we do have time now for questions for both Paul and Rob. So I'm going to go through the ones that are already here in the chat, but if there are any other questions, you can feel free to add them to the chat or raise your hand and we'll call on you to have an opportunity to unmute and ask. But here's one question. Does connecting to a peer support aligning with the client's gender identity, sexuality, and or culture specifically mean staff that also identifies the same as them, or can it be anyone who is affirming of their identities?
I would say I mean, it can be anyone, you know, as long as they are an ally. It does make it better though if they do identify in the community, only because they have that same experience, and so that they can let the youth know that how I made it through, you can make it through too, and let's work on what you feel will help you to make it through all this.
And Rob, I'll say I 100% agree. Definitely better if you can find that co-alignment, but it can be challenging to find that as well. Having somebody like Rob, having some other people there that are affirming, that are part of community, or at least allies and advocates, I think is going to be a big component.
Great. And I think you did mention it in the training, but there's a question around how to get trained, particularly to speak to parents. So is there any like hub or a location folks can go and find trainings for this?
So I think my biggest one that I think about trainings for parents is going to be the Family Acceptance Project out of San Francisco State University. They have that. And then I also believe, and are we talking LGBTQ plus specific? If we are, Family Acceptance Project to me is kind of, I would say probably the gold standard when it comes to family support within the LGBTQ plus community. Rob, do you have other resources that you would recommend?
Locally, the Desert AIDS Project, and also the LGBTQ Center here in Palm Springs and at Coachella. I know they have a lot of resources, and they support the youth there.
Okay.
Oh, and those out of San Francisco State University, that's all available online as well. So you don't have to travel to San Francisco to get that.
That's good. Do you have a list of therapists and social workers in Riverside County who are both gender affirming and trauma informed or certified?
I do not. I don't know about Paul.
Off the top of my head, I do not. However, I usually will recommend to families, to other folks, to use psychologytoday.com, and they can actually filter that by the person's gender, by what they need, by their sexuality and other things of that nature, and also their insurance too, because it can be complex when it comes to finding gender affirming therapists. Not everybody has access to, I'm going to pay cash rate for somebody. I will tell you that at my practice, we probably take about 15 or 20 different insurances, and I try to open that up. I'm trying our hardest right now to get on IHP. I know that Renewing Hope is a very big provider, and they have they take IHP as well. We got to think about that too when we think about a list of stuff about the socioeconomic impacts. Does the person have access to financial resources to be able to pay, and what is their insurance? If you need specific help on that though, feel free to reach out. But if you go to psychologytoday.com and use the filter through there, we can actually filter by zip code, by city, and a bunch of other parameters that can help that definitely.
Great. I don't see anything else in the chat. Are there any other questions for Paul or Rob? You can feel free to unmute or drop it in the chat. All right, I don't see any activity around that, so I'm gonna assume that people have gotten their needs met. I want to thank you both again so much for being here today and sharing both incredible presentations. Don't leave yet, folks. We have a little bit more to go. We do have some local resource information that we want to share, as well as some upcoming events. So I'm going to turn it to Rebecca to share that information with you now.
Okay, yes, thank you, Diana. And thank you again to Rob and to Paul for sharing such important information with us. So we do have some local resources that we want to just highlight for you. These are resources specifically to support our LGBTQ plus youth and their wellness. So we encourage you to take note of these resources and share broadly with others. The first that we have is the Transgender Health and Wellness Center, whose vision is to provide safe, prosperous, and healthy environments for transgender people across Southern California. So this agency actually has 3 locations in Riverside County, 2 in the city of Riverside, and then 1 in Palm Springs. They do offer a wide range of services, including free mental health services for youth, online support groups, housing support. They have an LGBTQ plus youth drop-in center and a lot more. So we encourage you to visit their website by scanning the QR code on the screen. And I'd like to briefly highlight a few of their mental health programs that they're offering. So as I may have mentioned earlier, they offer virtual health meetups, including an LGBT plus neurodivergency support group. They also offer a support group for partners, families, and friends, and even a Dungeons and Dragons group. So as Paul noted earlier, social connections are a strong protective factor for our youth, and Transgender Health and Wellness Center has a variety of services to support the social emotional needs of our LGBT youth. And then lastly, I'd like to highlight the Marsha P. Johnson LGBTQ Drop-In Center at the Palm Springs location. Here, youth have access to a safe space, support groups, a food pantry. They even have a game room, free therapy, mentorship, and just lots of different exciting events. So again, for more information, you can scan the QR code to see all that they have to offer. And then we have the next is our local resource is True Evolution, whose mission is to fight for health equity and racial justice, to advance the quality of life and human dignity of our LGBTQ plus people. This agency serves both Riverside and San Bernardino counties, and their services include therapy, support groups, emergency housing, and HIV health services, and that's just to name a few. Tender Gardens, which we've highlighted here, is one of the support groups offered by True Evolution. It is provided in a hybrid format, so you can join online or in person at their Riverside office. Again, we just invite you to scan their QR code on screen to learn more. And just as a reminder, this is all information that we will be sending out to you later after today's meeting. Next, I'd like to share about the Rainbow Pride Youth Alliance, which is a nonprofit service organization for LGBT plus youth and allies in the Inland Empire. So they provide a safe space for young people to meet, to make friends, and participate in just various weekly events and activities. RPYA is also known to offer support and resources for gender affirmation and for community building. So they do offer advocacy. RPYA is committed to organizing, lobbying, and supporting political and community efforts to make the Inland Empire LGBTQ plus affirming. They provide education. They aim to provide youth and guardians and parents with social emotional support and LGBTQ plus education for our community partners. They also really highlight wellness. So they are dedicated to facilitating activities and programs that will enrich the lives of our LGBTQ plus folks and promote creativity, health, and wellness to support positive mental health of our queer youth. And then again, we encourage you to reach out to learn more about their virtual support groups and the other types of programming that they offer for our LGBTQ plus community. And we have also curated a short list for you as well of national resources that are available. Some of these have been shared by Paul, so you'll see some familiar ones here, but we do have some services that are provided by the Trevor Project. Those are listed on the left side of the column. The Trevor Project is a nonprofit focused on suicide prevention efforts among our LGBTQ plus youth. The Trevor Project does offer crisis intervention, resources, and support through telephone, chat, text, and it's offered 24/7. We do have as well the SAGE LGBT Elder Hotline. This is a free resource that connects our LGBTQ plus older adults with confidential support and crisis response. Again, it's offered 24/7. Then we have our Trans Lifeline, which provides the trans peer support through telephone, and it's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And we also have our Mental Health America, which is also a great resource for finding LGBTQ friendly therapy near you. So that may help with the question we saw in the chat earlier. So we encourage you to visit their website, which is on the slide, and also check out their article that's titled, "How Do I Find LGBTQ Friendly Therapy?" So those are just a few that we have found for you, and I'm going to turn it over to Diana to talk about some learning opportunities.
And before I get into that, there is another question that came up in the chat, and I'm not sure if it is specific to LGBTQ and our two presenters, or it's a more general question. But the question is, could you expand on contagion behavior during postvention? So I don't know, Nancy, if you can clarify if that's specific to our LGBTQ population or more general. So it's referencing your presentation, Paul. Thank you, Nancy. So can you speak to that a little bit? You're on mute.
Can you expand a little bit on what you mean when it comes to contagion behavior? It may be helpful for me a little bit.
It was a phrase that was used in your presentation. That's why I was hoping to know a little bit more.
Gotcha. Okay. For some reason, I don't recall that specific specific term, but definitely.
I think it might have been discussed during the risk factors, but it's okay.
Okay.
I can do some more research or reach out to you
I'll probably have
afterward.
to follow up on that, to be honest with you.
No worries. Thank you.
Well, and more in general, I suppose we could just talk about the fact that there is a potential contagion impact after suicide loss suggests that when we, after a suicide death, how we respond, how people are supported, those especially impacted by that suicide loss, particularly vulnerable populations, are at increased risk for suicide now themselves. So that's the contagion effect. And so that's why when we reporting and talking about suicide loss, the language we use and what we choose to share is really important because it can have a negative impact on vulnerable populations. So these are on folks that are at a disproportionate risk for suicide themselves. Now will be at an increased risk now that they're even they've been now exposed to someone that they knew, cared about, or were around that has died by suicide. So part of the work of the coalition overall includes talking about best practices in messaging and also developing more robust postvention responses. So when there is a suicide loss, what sorts of resources and supports are we putting in place for the people who are impacted by that loss, thereby reducing their potential risk for suicide themselves? And that in and of itself is prevention. So we are working on several active postvention responses in our postvention subcommittee. If you want to know more about that, Nancy, you can find it on the website, and you're also welcome to join us in our postvention work. We're doing several things, actually, a few initiatives that we're working on to address that area. So I'll pause on that. We can come back to it later if there's more questions. And so let me go over some of these last slides. And if there's additional questions, again, feel free to put them in the chat. Learning opportunities. These are some of the trainings Paul was referencing earlier. Know the Signs, Safe Talk and Assist or Applied Suicide Intervention Skills Training. These are available to anyone who lives, works, or worships in Riverside County at no cost. Huge savings. And so you can scan that QR code or click that link and get to our training page, where we've got registration available for you right then and there for anyone that wishes to come to these trainings. These are our in-person workshops. We also have some virtual options available on more general mental health awareness information. You can find all that on the same page. If you represent an organization and you would like your team trained, we are actually happy to come to you as well. So the general open ones to the community are available here at our Ruston Conference Center. But if you have an organization and you've got at least 15 people, we can make arrangements to come to your site and offer any of these trainings as well. So if that's something you're interested in, let us know. Some other upcoming activities and events we want you to be aware of. Save the date. We are so excited to announce our 3rd annual Suicide Prevention Conference. This is the one time of the year that our coalition comes together in person, because most of our work is done virtually. So this is an all-day conference. We're October 3rd at the Riverside Convention Center this year, and our focus is on collaboration for suicide prevention, best practices in youth suicide crisis response. So that registration information will be coming out very soon. If you are in this meeting, we now have your information and you will be added to our email list. So you will get this invitation and registration when it comes out. And you will also get invitations for all of our future meetings as well. Next, we are also excited to announce continued partnership with the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention's Coachella Valley or Inland Empire Cities chapter to co-sponsor the Out of Darkness walks. So these are walks for individuals who have been impacted by suicide loss. It's a day of coming together and honoring those we've lost and bringing awareness to the community and preventing future suicides. So the coalition is a regional lifesaver sponsor, and we will have, we're sponsoring all 3 of their walks, but we're highlighting the 2 that are here in Riverside County, which is the first one on September 28th will be our Riverside County walk at the Fairmount Park. And so we are hopeful that some of you will be able to join us there. And then there will be another walk on October 19th in Coachella Valley at the Palm Desert Civic Center. So there are the QR codes. You can sign up. The Riverside County Suicide Prevention Coalition will have a team of its own, and you are welcome to join our team. If you wish to, when you register, you just need to add that team name, and you can be a part of this work with us. However, maybe your organization wants to do its own representation. We still want you there. Make your own team. Let's have some really happy competition that gives us opportunity to fundraise for this really important work. AFSP does a majority of their work is about research related to suicide prevention. And we need more work in that area. So please join us at these events. And though all that registration is currently open and ready to go. And then next slide, I just want again to remind you all about where you can find more information about the work of the coalition. You can go to rivcospc.org and find all of our historical information if you haven't been a part of the work so far. You can also join a subcommittee on that website or just scan that QR code and it'll take you right there. So you can be a part of that work as we move along. The next time we come together is going to be that in-person conference on October 3rd. So we hope you'll be able to join us. And then our next virtual webinar similar to this one will be in the start of 2025. And we'll make sure that you get that information via email. And we do take feedback seriously. We want these meetings to be helpful, useful, to really build skills and expertise in Riverside County on how to address suicide. Our goal is to eliminate suicide in our county. So we're taking feedback from you. Please scan this QR code and take just a few moments to give us some feedback. How did this work for you? Was this helpful? What do you want to know more about? What are the areas that we want to grow our own skill set in? And that's really how we want to shape webinars that we offer each quarter, as well as our full day conference. So we want to hear from you. What is it that you want to know? What would help you grow in your skills related to suicide prevention? And we'll take that information and not only be considering them for these quarterly meetings and the conference, but also for other larger training opportunities that the coalition may be able to sponsor. So as you all are filling out that survey and giving us some of that feedback, I'm going to scan this chat and see about if there's any more questions. And then if anyone has any additional information or any more questions, you can feel free to put it in the chat. You can also unmute and ask your question directly. So let's see. Is there a fee associated with the in-person conference? Audrey, no. Yeah, Maisha got to it first. The conference is completely free as well. There is limited seating. So when the registration comes out, act fast so that you will get a spot on the registration. Any questions? Final comments? We do appreciate so much. Thank you again, Paul and Rob, for being here today and providing this incredible information. We thank you all for your time and attention and being with us for this whole time. That is all that we have for you today. Those of us in leadership will stick around, Paul and Rob, if you can, for a few more minutes, if any final questions or thoughts come in. But otherwise, thank you all so very much. Have a great rest of your day, and we hope to see you at the conference and the Out of Darkness walks.
Thank you, everyone.
All right, lots of thank yous. I don't see any more questions, so.
Thank you to Rob. Thank you, Paul. That was some really wonderful information that you shared with everyone today. So appreciative of your time.
Thank you. Thank you for the
Thank you.
opportunity.
Truly, thank you for the opportunity. If anything ever comes up in the future, feel free to ask. Truly honored.
Same here.
And if there's any
we
feedback,
will.
please share it
Yeah.
too.
Yes, please.
I have a feeling that you probably will get some more requests after today. It was so well received, the information that both of you shared. So, oh yeah.
All right, everybody.
All
So
All right.
cut the
Okay.
recording, and I'll go ahead and end the meeting for everyone. Have a great day, you guys.
Thank you all so
Bye-bye.
much.
Thank you. Have a great
Bye-bye.
day. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.